So, welcome, Allison. I'm so excited to have you on the show, and it's been so fun getting to catch up with you lately and kind of hear where life's been leading you in the last little while. So, welcome.
Good to be here.
Can you tell us where you're recording from today?
Oh, I'm actually in a Bar Method studio. I'm at the place where I work. So I'm at the Bar Method South Lake in Texas.
Awesome. Well, that is so exciting, and we're going to be getting deeper into all about the bar method today. So I'm really excited for us to learn more. And could you just start by sharing what your introduction was to the bar method and like what was your initial draw?
I was a school teacher for a really long time, and I had been living all over. And I had moved to San Francisco to go to grad school, but I was also teaching at the same time. And one of my good friends from back in the day when I lived in Idaho, she had moved to Dallas, and she and her sister fell in love with the bar method out in Dallas. And then they loved it so much, they decided to open up their own studio. And so they would come to San Francisco for trainings because San Francisco is where the flagship is. It's where it started. So the first studio for Bar Method is in San Francisco. And the first year that I moved to San Francisco, Erin came to visit me. And she was, of course, there for training to be a new owner. She was very excited. And she's like, oh, you live in the city and, you can go to the very first Bar Method there ever was. And she walked me past the studio and was like, you should go there. And I was like, I don't know, maybe. Um, and so, she didn't pressure me or anything. And I knew that she was on that journey. And I'd see her photos pop up from time to time. But it was really funny because she'd every now and then she'd be like, "Have you gone yet? Have you checked it out?" And I was like, "Maybe one day." I honestly did not go into that studio for 2 more years.
Wow. You're not an easy sell.
Like, maybe. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, I definitely am the person who was like, I don't know. That's how I learned about it and how I knew about it.
So then 2 years go by and you decide to finally give it a try. Why?
Um, so I was in grad school. I was also a high school teacher, very stressed out all the time. Wasn't And when you're stressed out and you're working a lot, you don't take the best care of your body. I used to do workouts, like just online workouts, nothing special. And I used to do jogging, but I had fractured my foot, and it never felt the same after that. And it was such a process to heal it that I was actually really afraid to ever do any kind of exercise again because I was just really worried about refracturing my foot and all of the things that would involve the healing process. But it was coming up on the December, like Christmas break of that school year. And the school that I worked at had a boarding school program. I was actually working that as like a supervisor in the school dorms. And so we would have dinner with the students, and I was sitting at a table with two other teachers who were on staff. And we were all kind of just talking about like how stressed out we were and how like we were eating poorly and probably drinking too much and just really feeling kind of gross about ourselves. And we kind of that cliche, oh, with the new year coming up, maybe we could do some kind of workout or something. And I was like, well, my friend Erin keeps telling me to go to the bar method, and she promised me that it was low impact and so that it's good for people like me who have had these past injuries and didn't want to get a new injury. And they were like, oh, I've heard bar is pretty good. And, my friend Erin loves to talk about bar method. So she had recently posted on social media her before and after photos. And so I pulled up her before and after photos, and I was like, hey, this was her before bar method and her like after. And they were sold. They were like, yes, that picture did everything for us. So we all made this agreement that after we came back from Christmas break, we would start going. And we did. We all went together for our first class. They stuck it out for we all three of us got like the 2-week introductory whatever thing you get. And they stuck it out for those 2 weeks. I was the only one who went on to get like a membership and continue on from there. So I was like, well, fine, I'm going to keep going.
Yes. And what was that factor that made you want to stick around and see what more could happen? Like, what was that?
It was a couple of things, like, Erin was my good friend. So I was like sort of determined to like tell, like, I really gave this a good try. I didn't want to sound like a quitter. I'm definitely the kind of personality when I say I'm going to do something, I like commit, I'm all in. So I think that was also part of it. My personality was like, I said I was going to do this, so I'm doing this. But then it also became a refuge for me because I was teaching at the high school. I was living there as a dorm parent. So you don't really have escape from work. And it was becoming an increasingly more stressful environment to be a part of. And not the kids, like just, like with any job, like political stuff or administration stuff. And, I think that like not being able to find a true separation of having work and home life, you never really go home from your job, and so I, like, without thinking about it, it wasn't a conscious thought process. It just sort of like, I would go every day after school and I started to look forward to it more and more and more. And like, I think it was all like a combination of just like this psychological place to distance myself, to like get my head clear after the end of a school day. I would have to like take a 20-minute car ride out there. So that took time. And then it felt like a completely different part of the city. And then you have this hour to yourself. And, when you're in the room, this is like, it's 100% you time. We always talk about how self-care is so important and find time for you. But, how many times do we sit down to read a book or take a bath or do something and our mind is racing and we can't fully like focus and just zero in on what's in front of us, or we're distracted, like, oh, I should go do something over there, look at my phone. And when you're in that room and the music starts and the teacher's on, like, you weren't allowed to bring in a cell phone, you aren't allowed to have cell phones in class, and you are 100% focused on this exercise for an entire hour. And the more I learned about the workout, the more you realize that you have to be listening the whole time because it's a lot about form. The bar method's whole shtick is that they're huge on form. And when you want to learn how to do these things correctly and do the exercises and movements effectively, you have to be consciously thinking of like your head to toe. What is my body doing head to toe? I always call it like multitasking. I feel like bar method is multitasking. And again, it was like inadvertent. I didn't try to do this, but you realize that for an entire hour every day, you are only thinking about the moment. You are like literally in the moment. You're not thinking about anything but your body and what it's doing and how the muscles are feeling. And something about that was incredibly addicting. And again, I don't know if I made the connection at the time that I was super addicted to it. I just knew I was obsessed. I wanted to go every single time, every single day. And it was funny too, because, I'd be like, I have to go. And then I get in the room and class would start and you would go into, like, we usually start class with a plank. And I'd go into that plank and I'd be like, why am I here? Like, why did I do this? It's hard, right? It never was like, oh, this was so easy. Like every time I felt like I was being tortured. And then I'd be like, what was that? Why did I come back? This was so hard. Like suffering, like barely walking out of the classroom. But I kept wanting to go back. And so that was like the draw. And at that point, I was hooked. I just had to keep going.
Yeah, wow. There's so many interesting things in that. But one thing that stands out is the idea of like for self-care to be effective, it really should be an activity that drops you into the present where you really can only be in the present. Like to be present is practice self-care. So I don't know, I find that super fascinating. I'm also curious, like what were some of the biggest differences? Because you are someone who's worked out before in other ways. Like what were some of the biggest differences about the bar method? Just to give people even an idea of like what it's like.
Um, and I think it's based on just like also my own personal experience. Like mostly the workouts I had ever done were online.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, I didn't, one, it's less motivating because they're speaking to nobody. It's like a video, right? I mean, even if it's a YouTube video, like, yes, they try to be motivational and everything, but it's not personalized. And you really have to motivate yourself. And I used to do this Jillian Michaels video. And like, honestly, whenever she said do push ups, I would be like, I don't do push ups. Like, I don't do. And so I wouldn't do it. I was cheating myself. Also, like you're not aware of your form. I do remember getting like from a Jillian Michaels video. I remember I had shin splints because I remember I was walking through an airport at some point when I was doing this video regularly, and I remember like hobbling because I had such bad shin splints. I don't know how I did that, but it definitely happened. Or just like with running, I had no formal training. I just decided, oh, I'm gonna start jogging, and I probably bought bad shoes, and then I would just push myself and do these like spurts and run on pavement. No wonder I fractured my foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in that respect, that was different. In the bar method, it's also like when you're in a class setting, there's no escaping it. The teacher says push-ups, you have to do push-ups, and there are modifications. You don't have to like do them the most powerfully in the room, but the challenge is there to do them. And then the teacher is there to watch your form. And something that I really fell in love with the bar method and appreciated that I hadn't experienced so much in other workouts is that they learn how to watch for your form. So they not only set up the exercise, but then they look at individuals and like let you know like how you need to adjust based on your own body type too. And they do hands-on adjustments. So they come around and they adjust you so that you can be in the muscle correctly and that you can keep your joints safe. And so that's something I never experienced before. And it took some getting used to. I remember the first, like you hear your name called out in class. It's personalized. Like, Allison, do this. And I was like, oh, great. Now I'm on the spot. And that is something that as I, shifted into the career realm with it, I realized that like newcomers are often like, oh, my name was being called but I fell in love with it. I came to really appreciate it. And then, the teachers, they celebrate your successes. So, maybe the teacher said I needed to correct XYZ, but then later on in class, she would say something like, oh, you're doing this so well. So you don't feel like you're just defeated. You do feel like, okay, that's something to work on, and this is something that I'm doing correctly. Yeah, so that, I never experienced that in a workout before.
Yeah, and interesting too, when there's nothing wrong with home workouts, but you don't really know the progress you're making because no one's really watching you. It's hard to track that. And then you also don't know if you're doing it wrong, and there's no one to celebrate if you do make progress. So it's like those elements, I can see how they would be really powerful and make you want to keep coming back if you start seeing progress and things like that as well. So that's really cool. So then how did the opportunity arise for you to become an instructor?
That's an interesting story. So this was in the fall of 2018, I want to say. I'd been doing bar method, so I started going to classes January of 2018. And then by September of that same year, I kind of knew I was done with my job at the school, which is really convenient to be a teacher in September and be like, maybe I need to quit this job. Things were just getting very stressful, and I was like experiencing high levels of anxiety. I wasn't sleeping very well. And one of my friends, I would call her a lot just to process through it. And I would just like be in tears, and she's just like, all right. And I'm like, I just keep thinking about quitting. And she's like, well, what would you do instead? I'm like, I have no idea what I would do instead. That's why I haven't quit.
Yeah.
Why I'm still here. And like all I'd ever known was teaching, and I didn't know if I could make a career change. And somehow in the conversation, we started talking about bar method, just by chance. And she stopped me and she said, the minute you started talking about bar method, you became a different person. You sounded lighter. It's like I could just feel this weight come off of you. And, you went from like hyperventilating to just like happy and relaxed. And she's like, you obviously love it. Have you thought about teaching it? I was like, how do people get that job? I don't know how people get that job. So she's like, well, don't you just ask? And I was like, for some reason I psyched myself out. Like, no, why would they want me to be a teacher? There's so many people that go to the studio, like whatever. Well, so then I just kept doing my thing. And in October, there was one night where my studio was going to be closed for some reason. And because I was obsessed, I was like, no, I have to go work out. So there was another studio in the downtown area of San Francisco, and they had a class that night. And so I just purchased a drop-in and went, because the studios are owner run and they're franchised to each owner. So you can't have membership at one and swap it to another. But I was like, I'm going anyway. So I bought my class and I go. And when I was waiting to go to class, they had a sign up saying they were looking for help at the front desk. And I was like, well, that's probably a good way to get your foot in the door. And I'm sure working at the front desk will not make as much money as being a teacher, but I'll put the feelers out there. So I just put out some feelers and interviewed with the owner of the studio. And in our interview, she said, I can tell that you really love it. Have you ever thought about teaching? And I was like, well, yeah, I think that it would be really cool to be a bar method teacher, but, I never knew that opportunity. Like, how do you get that opportunity? And she's like, well, she's like, I just put out a post on like LinkedIn or something. And she's like, if you're interested in training, all you have to do is audition. And I was like, audition? She's like, yeah, you audition. And if we like your audition, then you can move into training. And she's like, you definitely have the front desk job, just so you know. But, if you want to do that. And so, yeah, I made the decision. I quit the job at the school, again, like a good teacher does. And this is like by the time I had my interview, this was November. So I quit my job in November as a school teacher, normal. And then I got the job at the front desk. I did my audition, and they decided to take me on as a trainee.
So that is a huge risk, a big leap to be taking, like you said, very, sort of like, stable career job to, I'm going to be a front desk, person at the bar studio and become a teacher. So yeah. How did you know that was worth it? Like how did you know, or what made you know it was going to be something you needed to do, even if it felt scary or didn't even make sense or add up really?
It's a hard question to answer. I think in some ways you don't know. Sometimes in life we take risks, and that's why it's a risk, because you really don't know what the payoff is. And I was thinking about this question, and it makes me think of, I know it's like super cliche, but it makes me think of Robert Frost when he says, the two roads diverge and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And I was like, yeah, he doesn't say it was better. It was easier. He just says it makes all the difference. And that can be any interpretation that you want it to be. And I feel like that's what happens when you take a risk. It's going to make a difference. Do we know what that outcome will be? There's no saying. I do know that I was very unhappy in my current state, and I knew I needed a change. And, it's like, okay, if I'm on the phone crying to my friend twice a week, this is probably not a mentally healthy place for me to be. Like, it's a toxic environment for me personally. And that was part of the risk reward where it's like, okay, it's scary to quit something. It's scary to, um, you know, step out of a salaried career. Now I have no way of really anticipating what my income will be. That was definitely terrifying. But there was definitely a sense of relief, you know. Like when I quit that job, honestly, the only thing that lingered in, like, maybe not regret, but like lingered in, like, was that, what should I have done, that was just being concerned about the students. You know, it was one of those hard things where it's like I wanted to stay for them, but at the end of the day, I had to make a choice for myself. And so that was really hard. And, you know, I think sometimes in life we do that. There are choices that we face, and we might need to make a choice that is selfish, and it's for us at the expense of, you know, how others might perceive it. And I definitely wrestled with that. I was like, I don't know if I should have done that. I feel like I abandoned them, you know, but then at the same time, I'm like, I'm not their parent. You know, so I had to like also remind myself, like, you are one educator in their life history of educators, you know, and I'm sure some people will get it, some people won't. But then in terms of like my own personal life, like I said, I felt like a weight came off my shoulders, and I loved it. When I started my training and I started working at the bar method, I just felt happier, and I was happy to get up and go to work, and I was excited to train and learn this whole new thing. And it did feel like a complete paradigm shift in my world, in my life. But yeah, I was definitely grateful that I took that chance and took that leap.
Yeah, which leads me to ask for our listeners if there's someone out there who's starting to feel like the job they're in is not right. Like you said, it's causing them anxiety, or just starting to just seem like it might not be where they need to be. And there's something else that they love doing, but they can't imagine that being a career. What would you say would be the first step for someone who like wants to make their passion, or the thing that's bringing them joy when it's not their job, like into something that they could do for a living?
You know, like, look to see what the options are, of course. You know, like, all I had to do was see that the place was hiring. So I know some passions are trickier than others. You know, I have a passion for writing, and I don't know if I could just like quit my job, be like, I'm a writer now, you know. But would I make a lot of money? Could I pay my bills? I don't know. So, you know, look at what the opportunities are. Definitely see if there's even that opportunity, because I was just convinced that there was no opportunity. And then of course I second guessed myself, and I was convinced that, like, well, why would I be good enough for that? Why would they want? So, you know, have more confidence in yourself, see if there's an opportunity, reach out if there's an opportunity. You know, you never know until you interview, you never know until you put yourself out there. And so I think that would definitely be the first step. This is also, like, it sounds so cliche, is apparently my favorite word today. Making another friend of mine, before I made this choice, she encouraged me to make your standard, like, your list, your pros and cons. And she's like, do it, Allison, list it out. Like, what are the benefits of, you know, staying in the one job? What are the drawbacks? And then what are the benefits and drawbacks of taking this chance? And then you weigh those against each other, and you see what the biggest things are. Of course, like, financial concern was one of the biggest, like, drawbacks. So that was one thing I was like, I'm all right, you know, financial security. But at the end of the day, I decided, like, I think my mental health is more important than my bank account. So yeah, I had to do a lot of hustling too. I had to, like, accept, like, at one point I was working in this, like, speakeasy bar as, like, a 1920s cocktail waitress. I had to work a lot of odd jobs. I had to really, really hustle, pick up a lot of hours. I worked a lot of long days. But, you know, if that's what you love, and that's something else to, like, be aware of, like, when you turn your passion into your path, into your career, it becomes work. You know, they say, like, oh, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I definitely don't think that's true. I think
Oh, yeah.
if you turn your passion into your job, you will work, and now your passion becomes work. And, some people, I don't think, see that coming or are ready for that, because I know that now that I am a bar method teacher, you talk to staff and especially studio owners who will say like they have lots of clients who come forward and say like, oh, I'd love to be a bar method teacher. But, they're like, I don't know if that person is aware of how much work is involved. They love it. They love being here. Are they ready for the amount of work and the effort? And are they ready for their sacred hour a day? It's like your safe space. It's your self-care, your hour a day. Are they ready to turn that now into their job? And they're going to be there a lot more than their 1 hour a day. And, not every day is easy. And so it's like, are you prepared to lose some of that sacredness, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Or the novelty of this is my, my sacred little hour I get to come to escape from the world, like that sort of thing. It will change if it becomes your career, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
it will.
What do you think prepared you to make, such a kind of a bold career move like that? Do you think there's anything like from your past or your teaching experiences that, gave you what you needed to be confident to step out?
Probably just a few things. I think I was so stretched thin and done at my other job that it made it easy to like jump off the bridge. Like if the bridge is on fire on both ends and the fire's coming here and now it's going to get you. Like I think I was in one of those situations where it definitely, the risk to jump in was a better option. So that was part of it. I've also taken other risks before. When I was 30, I moved overseas to a country I'd never been to before, sight unseen. And, I had a job. I had accepted a job, and that's why I went. But I had no friends there. I had no contacts there. And I basically sold most everything in my apartment, got rid of my cats, which was really hard, and went. And I think I was overseas for 4 years. Part of that and just the learning how to adjust to a new culture, like it was hard. It was also amazing. And so I think maybe that played a role, or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't realize it was a whole 4 years that you were in Prague either. That, yeah, that's so crazy. I thought it was shorter than that. So it's quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as a teacher and as you've, dug a lot deeper into bar method, like what are some of the things that are most rewarding to you about teaching? And how does it differ from teaching students in like an education setting to teaching in the fitness realm?
Yeah. I mean, there are things that overlap. It's funny. Sometimes I joke, like with a fitness class, you tell them to do something and then they all do it. And so sometimes I'll joke in class, like, oh, this is so nice. I have asked 30 people to do something and they all just willingly do it. And, like with teaching, of course, like students will do what you tell them to do, but, it's different and you're going to always have that kid going to do whatever he's going to do. And so there's not, that's different. Also, the similarities is that like you're helping people move toward progress. So, like someone coming into a bar method class for their first time, you're helping them through a journey of, not really knowing what they're doing to getting stronger and better. And that's similar to teaching, like take someone who has whatever writing skills they have, and then you're guiding them into getting stronger and better. I think that there is obviously much less pressure in this job because when I was an English teacher, there was all kinds of pressure for students to improve their writing skills, for their ability to have really strong reading comprehension, Test scores were very important. In every school I ever worked at, of course, they want to have really good test scores. And preparing students to either go to high school or write really strong college entrance essays. And that's a lot of pressure, In some ways you do put it on yourself. You do take a personal responsibility for it. And, here, yes, I have a responsibility to keep clients safe. If I see someone doing something that could really over time hurt their low back and I just was there is still a responsibility to them, but I feel like the pressure is so much less. And it's my little class of my adults, I'm going to teach them and then they're going to go home and I'm not going to go sit down at my computer and have 10 emails from parents about this, that, or the other thing,
True.
But there's also similarities in planning, as someone who had worked in education, I understand the importance of being very well prepared. That's what I learned is half of classroom management. If you're going to teach students, half of the management of it and keeping, kids behaving well is being very prepared and having a plan and walking in the door with an air of I know what I'm doing and I have a plan for today. And if the plan goes awry, being ready to jump in with plan B and having backup plans, it's oh, you finished your work? Oh, I have 8 more things. You want to do those? And so with, learning how to be a bar method teacher, I still write out my plans. I still take time to practice. I think about what I'm going to say. I think about what they're learning. And something that I think also transitioned really well for me, when you teach, especially when you teach middle school, you have to give them a reason why they're doing something if you want them to buy in. Buy-in is also half the battle. If you just hand a kid a worksheet and you say do this, they're going to be why? And it's really, really important to explain the importance and benefit of why you're doing something and why you felt this was something they should be doing. Otherwise, there's no buy-in. And even if they do it, they will do it half-heartedly. And so that's something I do try to keep in mind when I teach fitness classes. It's you're doing this and it's doing these things for you. Or something that Bar Method does really well, if we ask you to do something, we do what's called a why to. So I'm not just going to say, Erica, lift your hips 2 more inches. I'm going to say, Erica, lift your hips 2 more inches so you can protect your low back. There's always a why. You're doing this because of this. And so I think that, that's also obviously a similar thing between the two.
Yeah. So is that unique to your, preparation method for teaching classes, or how does that, are the classes already pre-decided what's going to be in each class, or is everyone choreographed specifically for that class?
That's a good question. So we have certain formats. There are different formats for Bar Method. We're most known for our signature hour-long Bar Method class, which we would say is for mixed abilities. So there is a structure to the class. There's a warm-up, then you do a stretch, then you do thigh work, stretch, you do seat work, you do a series of stretches underneath the bar, and then you do curl work, and then you end the class with back dancing and final stretch. So there's that format. Some things you have to do, like in warm up, there are certain things that will always appear. You always will do certain exercises in warm up. You will always do push-ups. You will always do reverse push-ups. When you end class, you will always do back dancing. Actually, I take that back. We have some variations that aren't as popular, but they're there. And otherwise, it's kind of on the teacher what you want everything to look like. So there are 3 sets of thigh in a standard method class. You have to do 3 sets, and you are required to do 1 set that's low heeled, because we do thigh work with our heels lifted, like you're kind of on releve. But we're very into safety. So one of our rules in thigh work, for example, is you have to do 1 set of thigh with low heels. to protect people's toes, of course, and the arches of their feet. And it's like my decision to pick, and different studios operate in different ways. The last studio I was at, our teacher trainer, so she was in charge of all the teachers and training teachers, she put out a weekly seat schedule. So there's a part of class where you work on your glutes, and she would say Monday is this exercise, Monday is this, Monday is this, as a way to keep it varied. Because she had noticed, sometimes if you don't do that, teachers can fall into habits like, oh, it's easier to teach this, or this is my favorite thing to teach, so I'm only teaching that. And this way, or it was also challenging, like, some things are new to you, or you're like, that one's really, I don't understand it as much, so I'm not going to do it. So it was a way to keep us sharp and know all the different exercises, and also a way to keep it varied. But the choreography was still up to me. And the studio I'm at now, they have a fun way they do it. Every week, a different teacher sends out a schedule for the seat of the day, and also what the low-heeled set is. So I have to do what those things are. I mean, have to, but you do it. But again, around that, I can decide what I'm doing around that, and my choreography is up to me. So you can still have your own personal touch and personal flair. And that way also clients can't always anticipate, like they know the format, they can anticipate the format, but it's good to keep your body guessing. It's, it's better for your body to not do the same exact thing all the time. So it's also good that we have this variety, and you can choose your variety for that way.
Yeah. What do you do then to stay on top of like your teacher game? Like, how do you stay growing?
They send out technique notes every month. Headquarters does. And sometimes they're just like a deep dive into exercises where they're like, okay, this specific exercise, we're going to talk about it in more depth so you can understand it more and how it's working in the muscle, and maybe some tips and tricks, so then you can take that into the classroom. We have an online tool, like we call it Digital Chalk, where you can sign in and you can watch videos. So anytime they release new exercises, which they do often, you can watch the exercise in a video, you can read the notes on it, you can learn how to modify it, how it benefits you, how to make it safe for your clients. And those sorts of things. Yeah, it's like, I think that, and then also as a studio, you do staff trainings. So like my last studio, I feel like we would do like staff trainings quarterly, where we would go through things. And then once a year, we would have, Bar Method has what they call national coaches. A national coach would come to the studio and do like real in-depth hands-on stuff with the staff. And then every year you have to recertify. And in order to recertify, you have to take a big ol' anatomy test. Covers anatomy, and it covers the exercises, the safety, the rules, all the things. And so usually one of the staff meetings that we have covers like getting prepared to take that test. But that's a part of it. If you don't take the test, or if you don't pass, you don't get recertified, and then you can't teach. So.
Yeah. So then what, like before class, do you specifically do to like just prepare to be in front of the room, leading people? Like, I mean, I think of fitness instructors, they always seem to have a lot of energy as well. They can't always probably feel so energetic, but that's what, is projected. So I'm just curious, like, how do you prepare just on the daily to lead and teach, and if that way makes sense?
Yeah, my process is, I like to see, like, if I'm teaching in the morning, I'll do this the night before, or if I'm teaching later in the day, I'll do this in the morning, but I'll see what the seat of the day is, what the low-heeled set is, and then I go to my class plans because I have them all written out and organized. I'll find my class plan. I'll pick one that I want to do, And then I just review the exercises. Sometimes we have a manual as well. I'll go to the manual, remind myself. Sometimes I just refresh my memory on like, okay, what are the safety things? Because we have a lot of like, don't do this, don't do that. Or like, what are the benefits? I forgot like what this does. So I'll just refresh my memory. And then I am kind of a geek. I will go to the studio and like go into the studio classroom. I'll find the playlist I want to use. And then I do like a practice teaching. Teach to an empty room. For me, it grounds me. Like I'll practice my setups. It's just like it's like a rehearsal of like the setup, the order of what I'm doing, because I like to have it all in my head, and not have to like look at my plan. And I like to like project it as in like I know where we're going with this, and not like I'm just kind of making it up as I go. And then I practice counting to the beat. So I do all those things. Like practice counting, I practice my setups, I just practice like the order of what I'm doing, and that is my process.
Yes. Well, I'm sure it can be sensed how prepared teachers are. I think that's something probably people do pick up on. So, and it's probably an easier experience to be led by a teacher who you feel like is taking you somewhere specific. So I'm sure that's really valuable to those that come. From when you think about like lifestyle, would you say that there's a certain lifestyle when it comes to like diet and life outside of bar that aligns with the bar method, or that you specifically follow that you feel like is a really good fit for, because here you are taking, great care of your body and growing stronger. Like how does that translate out into the rest of your daily life?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like we're all people, getting to know people in this industry. It's like, yes, there is a commonality and a common theme of people eat pretty healthy, like making good eating choices. But we're all humans. We also love tacos, and, we love dessert. And, a lot of times we'll just joke about like, last night I had a pint of ice cream. And in some ways it's refreshing to know that you learn moderation. But I like that I have not met anyone who's a teacher, at least like in the studios I've taught at, who's like a huge snob about like, oh, you have to like only do this or do that. And it's like, no, we're human beings, like if you want to have a glass of wine and you want some ice cream, like treat yourself, why not? But then of course, like you do learn moderation. And I think there is something about, when you're doing a workout and you're more aware of your body and more in tune with your body, better what it needs. Like I love pizza. I am a pizza girl. Like I would eat pizza every day and not get bored of it. I know, really lame.
What's your favorite kind?
Like pepperoni, like
Classic, yeah.
classic. I would literally eat pizza every single day because I like it that much. I would not be bored. But I have done that and I do that. And I can then tell like, my body just really needs some vegetables. Like you just start to like, you just know. You're like, you know what? As much as I would love to eat some junk today, I just can't do it. So I think in some ways it helps you just be aware of like my body needs me to do something better for it. I need to eat, so I'll like then have like these 3 days where I just eat really, really healthy. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question because, like I said, I'm kind of an anomaly. I teach fitness classes, but I love pizza.
But in some ways, like you said, that is almost refreshing to know that like even fitness instructors are humans too and live life. So I think that's good to have kind of a balanced perspective on that. Is there certain things that you feel like really help you nutritionally, like for teaching, that you find helpful?
I don't know if I think about that as much. Yeah, that's a hard question. Like, I don't know if I ever choose to eat something to be like more focused in the classroom, other than making sure I've had coffee if I'm teaching in the morning. Honestly, I like to, if I'm going to be teaching, to only eat lightly. I found that like if I had like a big lunch or something like really heavy, I can still teach and still have that energy, but it's like that, like when people, they'll be at work and they're working all day and then they have lunch, if they eat too heavy of a lunch and you go back to work, you kind of want to like take a nap.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
sort of puts you in like slump for the rest of the day. And that's the same thing here. So sometimes it's like, okay, I have to be conscious to like maybe don't have like 3 donuts and then go teach a class because you're just going to feel like a slug. Um, but that's really the only thing I really think about in terms of what I need, before class.
Yeah. So then when you're talking about the mind body connection, just how it makes you more aware of your body. And so then you're more aware of like your body outside of the classroom too, and like how certain things affect it. When you talk about how it also was a refuge to you at the beginning, kind of what the first appeal was, like what do you think, or what would you say to the whole idea of like movement or exercise as a form of meditation in and of itself? And why is that element like so appealing to you? Like, how has that been meaningful to you?
A form of meditation. I think I didn't realize it was doing this until I later, like, it's not like a secret. We don't hide that it's like mind body connection. It's the bar method secret. They do talk about it. I started doing this just to get a workout in, like probably the same reason why anyone chooses to start working out or do a workout, like, oh, I want those results. I've heard it's a good workout, and then the surprise bonus is that it was this huge mind body connection, which is happening because of the fact that you're constantly having to listen to the teacher and think about what your body is doing from head to toe. Even now as an instructor, I am constantly having to like you just do like little adjustments, like, oh, my shoulder needs to be square, or my knee needs to shift back, or whatever it is. So you're thinking about all these little different things, and you are thinking about your body from head to toe. And so you're just very, very aware of your body. And I think that meditation is probably part of the whole thing of what kept me present in the moment and not thinking about other things. Because people have like, I've had people in my life say like, oh, you should try to meditate or whatever. And I'm like, there's no way my mind will just like, I'm like, I can't just sit and clear my mind. I have a very overactive, very analytical brain. And it will just run away. And yeah, every time someone,
I hear you.
that's part of the process, Allison. You just start there, and then you can slowly work your way to clearing your mind. I was like, my mind, I don't trust that it's going to clear. So for me, working out was that meditation, because I think there's a similar process to like clearing your head, and then a process of like thinking about just this moment and just what we're doing and just the here and now, that's still erasing all of the stress and life things, even like good things, like it's not bad to like not think about everything in your life. But yeah, like you just clear your head of everything. And that is a form of meditation. And, I think that's why people become addicted to exercise, whatever they're doing. And, that's why I loved running, because I could think and like, but I was like powering through my thoughts in a way. So that was something I really enjoyed when I was doing my running before I hurt myself. And then, okay, so you asked the question of like the mind-body connection, form of meditation. What am I forgetting?
I think you did explain just why it's personally meaningful to you, unless you had more to elaborate on that. Or is there also like anything as a result of strengthening that mind-body connection that you feel like has been really instrumental in like the rest of your life, like it's a discovery that you feel like you've made as a result?
I don't necessarily know. Like, I haven't really ever sat down and be like, how has this made me stronger? Like, I really don't know. Maybe I am in ways that I'm not completely aware of, or like, my day-to-day life, or, even dealing with the things that we're going through now in this like crazy 2020 COVID world. Like, I have no idea. Did it provide me some kind of mental strength that would not have been there otherwise and would have made this situation even harder. I can't answer that question. I have no idea. I do know that people told me like I walk taller and, you know, I have a more upright posture and that I walk with more confidence. And so that's a cool thing. But yeah, I think that's hard. It's hard to know unless I had like people in my life say to me, like, I've seen this change in you. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I have no idea how to answer that.
No, that's great. So I'm also curious if you feel like it still is a refuge for you. I know we talked about how that shifts when your passion then becomes your work. Or have you found now other things that you find are that now that this is your job, or does it remain to be? Like, what is that like now?
You know, I think that you know, how do I answer this question? Yes, it's still a refuge. Yes, it is work. And yeah, you get tired, you get exhausted. There were weeks where I would, like one week I taught 14 classes, and it doesn't sound like a lot when you are not on that end of it, because you would think like, oh, that's not even a part-time job, you know? So like 14 hours teaching, but the way I explain it is like, think about if you were in a one-person play on stage for an hour, and now however many hours you're doing that, like 1 hour on stage, if you've ever done a play, that's a lot. It's a lot of emotional, mental energy, and it's physical energy too. We don't actually do the workout with the clients. Some people seem to think I do the workout every time I teach. And I'm like, no. Demonstrate, and then I focus on the clients and I help them with their form and I help them. And there's no way I could teach all these classes if I had to do the workout as I did it.
Ah,
I think it's wild when you hear places that do it that way. And I'm like, I would do one class a day. All right. But I think because I'd been in such a crazy job environment, part of why it didn't feel like losing my sacred space, it's like now I could be at my sacred space every day and not go to a place that was like really wearing me out. And that was like still making it sacred. And yeah, and like you still get your hour, you still get to work out. Both studios that I've worked at, they're really conscious of the fact that their teachers are here because they love the workout, so they need to be able to work out. You have to learn how to adjust. Like your biggest availability your biggest availability to teach might have been where your favorite time to work out was. So you have to like, I had to be ready to like make that shift. But it's interesting. I used to be obsessed with the nighttime classes. That's when I would work out. And that was the only time I could work out. And then when I went into training and teaching, more and more, my time to work out was in the morning. Not early morning, but, you know, like more of a daytime class so that I could be available to teach other classes or whatever I was doing. And now I find it very difficult to take evening classes. It's funny how like because I made that shift and it became a different thing. Now it's like it no longer is a refuge for me to take a class at night. I'm like, I don't want to work out at night. I want it to be done in the day so I can move on with my life.
ah.
How that like your own mindset shifts. And yeah, like I said, it still is a refuge. I still really love it. And I do feel really grateful that I can do it right now, because when I was in San Francisco when COVID hit and we had to close, of course, and that was really, really hard. It was like kind of traumatizing to be like, wait, I can't go to work. And I didn't really like my apartment. I didn't really like where I was living. And so in some way, like having that job to go to continued to be a way to find refuge. And so it was like shocking to not be able to go and do my job and do the workout and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say it still has, like, you have to like know that it's going to change and learn how to adapt. But
Yeah. Do you think it's important that whatever method of exercise someone decides to do, that they actually love it? I'm just curious because you talk so much about how you love it. And it's like, I know there's a lot of people doing forms of exercise, and I used to be one that I hated, but I just did it for the sake of exercising. It's like, did that really help me at all? I don't know. I don't think so. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Like, do you think, because exercise is work, but do you think you should also love it?
it's hard to say. Like, I want to say you should love it because that's what will keep you wanting to go and going back. And we all have days. If you're someone who likes to work out, we all have days where we don't want to go. I have days where I'm like, ugh, and you just don't work out that day. That's fine. Like, I think that's also important. If you are just not feeling it, just don't push through and do it when you're in a bad state of mind about it, because then you won't like it. You'll be like, why am I here? You just kind of go through the motions. I know there are various different opinions about it. I have friends who do workouts that they hate, but they like the results, and so they just sort of push themselves to do it. And if you have the motivation to do that, that's fine. The reason why I would encourage people to find something that they love, one, you have the motivation to do it. You also have the motivation to understand it. And I think that's also why I fell in love with it so much. I wanted to teach it because I wanted to understand why my body was doing the certain things. I wanted to understand how it was helping me in the process of it. Like, why do we have this stretch that follows this exercise, and why are we doing it this way? And the more I delved into my training and the more I understood it, the more I loved it even more, and wanted to share that with people. So I think that's part of what keeps me like happy doing it as a job, and why I always wanted to do it as a client. I have done workouts that I hated, and I eventually stopped them.
Yeah, the longevity might not be there when it's something you hate.
So it's like I didn't stick with it. I didn't, eventually you just find enough excuses to be like, I'm not doing it. So I think in terms of just keeping yourself motivated and then understanding it, of course it would be better to do something that you love.
And interesting too, as you've talked about, going back to the mind-body connection too, that it's sort of been a way to learn to like love yourself more, as well, which I think like a form of exercise that like helps encourage and foster a relationship of love like towards your body is always going to be something beneficial. So how would you say that specifically, what does that look like for you? Like, do you feel like it has grown your love for yourself, and like in what ways?
Yeah. I think, that whole body connection, and you become more aware of your body. So then you're more aware of like who you are physically, which translates into your mental thoughts about yourself and all the things. And I mean, I definitely am someone who has struggled with self-confidence. Definitely I've struggled with like eating disorders and, things that are like pretty much linked into self-hatred, essentially. And sometimes I still wonder where that comes from and why I struggled so long and so many years with these things. It's not like it's gone. It's not like, oh, I 100% love myself. I am the best thing, I still obviously have insecurities and I still struggle with things, but I do feel like the thoughts that cause enough destruction to make choices that would lead to like an eating disorder and, self-loathing, I do feel that difference for whatever reason. I mean, it's something neurological. I probably can't put a finger on. Something about being very aware of my body, having to be in tune with my body. And we have mirrors in the classroom, and you like stare at yourself for an hour when you're doing well, not every wall has a mirror. You can also go to a non-mirrored wall. But if you get a mirrored wall to watch your form, like that's why it's there, so that you can see, are my shoulders, are my hips, am I in good alignment? But you're like watching yourself. And I think I like became more and more aware of like my dimensions and my body and me, and not hating seeing the person in the mirror. Like, you're staring at yourself for an hour, and I was like, oh, she's kind of pretty. There's nothing wrong.
Oh,
And it was weird. Like, I think just like having an hour where you're just like, you're focused on yourself and you see how strong you are. And maybe it's that, like, the powerfulness. Like, there's this one exercise we do called arabesque. It's slightly different from like a ballet arabesque, but there's still, if you know what arabesque is, there's obviously like a similarity to it, but it's hard. But you look so powerful when you're doing it. And, you know, you're doing these really intense, powerful exercises, and you see yourself doing it. It's not just like, I know I'm doing it. You can see yourself in a mirror and you're like, look at her. She's a badass. And so I think that part of that, you know, something shifts mentally. Again, I can't put a finger on it. It's probably a neurological thing, but yeah, that definitely, I know that difference in myself now. And like that being aware of, like, I shouldn't eat pizza 7 days a week. You know, like, I need to make a better eating choice. That would be better for me. And then I feel better. So then I don't hate my body. You know, I think those are some of the things that lead into self-loathing and eating disorders. Like, well, I hate my body. Because you don't feel good because you made bad choices. And so I think that it has definitely helped.
yeah. So then leading into the question we'll close with, like, if someone is wanting to grow their love for their body, like, what would be the first place for them to start, do you think?
Oh, man. What a question. I don't even know. I don't even know that. Like, wow. I don't even know how to answer that question. You know, like, there's so many answers that you could give, like, whether you say, like, talk to someone or go to therapy, or, you know, like, how do you learn to love yourself? I think it's a process. I think it's a journey. You know, in that respect, I would say find a workout you love, because if you're pushing yourself to do something you hate because you're trying to change something you don't like about yourself, I feel like that's like you have these two negatives working against each other.
Yes. Yes.
Versus you find something that you love, and then you love doing it, and you love how your body feels doing it, and then you love you doing it. And I think that, you know, then it becomes like, ooh, like, this is so cool. Look at me. Oh, hey, I kind of like what I can do. But honestly, that's a very hard question to answer. I don't know if I'm certified to answer that question.
I just think about how it's like at the beginning of maybe starting a workout routine or whatever, you like love the result that you think you're going to get. But in so doing, you actually learn to love yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I don't know, something like, you know, you were saying, you know, exercising or using your body in a way where you're building strength and you're learning to appreciate, or even just learning what's capable or how it works. Or like you said, you wanted to know more, you wanted to understand it. Yeah. I think even taking those steps to like further understand something that's maybe confusing about your body, like using that language instead of like, oh, this is wrong with me. I always get hiccups after whatever. It's like, maybe you could do like a little self-discovery and like make it fun and like try to figure out why your body does that. Because I think in the getting to know better, like you said, it's just so interesting too that you fell in love with yourself by actually just seeing yourself, like working hard, like visually seeing yourself doing it.
Yeah.
Caused you to like take a step back and like, wow, I am really strong. I am beautiful. Like, I think that's amazing too. So no, I think you answered fantastic. Well, Allison, thank you so much for sharing about your life and as a bar instructor and giving us a little bit of a window into your story. I know it will be an encouragement and inspiring for those who hear.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You take care.
All right. Bye-bye.